setting up antennas on an SRX1200 D series receiver. I'm going to connect up using USB in this particular case. There we go. And logging on so we can make changes to the receiver. Go to your project editor, set your scan time. Generally it's a half a second longer than the actual burst interval of your tags. It should be in your configuration sheets that you're given with your tags. If you don't have it, you can always give us a call here at Low Tech and we can find it out from your sales order. And in my case, I've got a 5.5 second tag, so I'm going to make it nice round 6 seconds. And normally if you're setting out a D version, you'll be able to enable GPS clock sync so that if you're setting out a whole bunch of them, then they're all on the identical time base. GPS clock sync modifies the clock or resets it every 3 hours so that it's very, very precise over an entire length of deployments or deployment as well. This aligned scan times, it's sometimes utilized when you have 4 different antennas pointing in the cardinal directions and north, east, south, and west. And if you're monitoring it, let's say for avian species or bat species, so that you can listen on all 4 and then sequence through to see which one, which of the antennas it was most powerful on, or if you can get it twice. So, and it's at the beginning of each minute, it will start on antenna 1, so you know if you have a series of receivers, they'll always be starting antenna 1 at exactly the top of the minute if you set them for 15 second scan time. Okay, so I'm just going to not use that. Normally I would enable the GPS clock sync. All you need is the GPS antenna and a clear view of the sky with it, and that's it. Okay, sending this first configuration to the receiver by hitting the send one. Next up, set our channels. In this case, I'm listing on 150/680, and I'm listing for a Low Tech 3 tag. Whatever your transmitter type generally comes with a configuration sheet. You'll know whether it's sensor or whatever you ordered. This one happens to be ID, and I only have one frequency at the moment. So I just make sure that that's send to the receiver, and as you can see, it changes down here to be sent. Now, antennas, this is the reason for this video. On the outside of a 1200D, you have 4 antenna ports. From the front, or closest to the latches, you'll start with antenna 1 and work your way to 4 down the side of the receiver. In this case, I'm setting it up for a presence absence, knowing that the tags can go both ways. So I'm setting up antenna 1 pointing downstream, and I'm setting up antenna 2 pointing upstream at a minimum of about 45 degrees. Depends on how far across your river is. In this case, it's just about 20 meters or so, so I could really get away with even a 60 degree pointing it, and I'd get quite a ways up the river. And the same with the downstream antenna 1, I get quite a ways up the river. Now, I'm asking you to put it on an angle because you don't want the back lobe to pick up between the antennas. There's a back lobe on a reception zone on each antenna, and you just want it making sure that it's listening off of the river. It's listening behind the receiver. Okay, so set it for 20, and now you have your master antenna options. Since we're only listening on one frequency, I generally suggest that you just leave no master antenna, and what it'll do is just switch from antenna 1 to antenna 2. This will allow you to see if you pick up a tag coming upstream. You'll pick it up several times, probably antenna 1, and signal strength should be getting larger and larger as you get closer to the receiver. And then as the fish swims away upstream, you should all of a sudden pick it up on number 2, and its signal should decrease as it goes away upstream. Now, if it hangs out between the two receivers, you may pick it up on both for quite a while, but you'll know the reason for that. Let's say you're on a riffle, or you've got an obstacle for the fish to go by. It may pick it up on both, and that's when gain comes in. When you can lower your gain so you get a smaller reception zone. Always check, make sure that the transmitter's always in the water when you're checking for range. Okay, so let's see what happens here. We're going to utilize the no master antenna. You've got your choices here. You could group them all. In this case, it would group the two antennas, even though it says A1, A2, A3, A4. And then you can select one antenna as a master. I'm just going to use no master, and I'll show you what happens here. And then I'm going to use frequency priority. In this case, you can go enable master preview, and what it does, it'll preview. In other words, it'll stay on that one master antenna. So we can try it out here. We're just going to select one antenna. We're just going to make it antenna 1, and you notice how the gain's different. Now dropping it down to 20 because we're in an office, that makes sense, but when you're out in the field, check. You'll see it as show up as AM1 in your data. So if you select a master and you know the fish are all coming from downstream, then it's a good idea. But you will have to remember that AM1 is the antenna master and is going to go back to it. So let's see what happens. We're going to send it. We're going to send one. And I should have no filters on, which I do not. And I should have, well, I do have some sensors set for low-tech 5, but these are low-tech 3 tags. And the sleep schedule should be always on, always awake, ready to roll. So I'm going to say done now, and now we're going to see what happens with the antenna master 1. So we're going to go into code log and live view on. And we'll see it scanning on master P1. We're still scanning on the same antenna. Alright, and now I'm going to start a tag, and then it should rotate. Once it picks up this tag, it should go from antenna to another antenna. Alright, so it should come up in a few seconds here. There we go. And now you'll see how it switches to antenna 1. And then goes to antenna 2 after its scan time, and then back to P1. Now, since it keeps picking it up, it's going to keep switching. But now I'm going to turn off the tag, and you'll see that it goes back to preview after it's done its little scan here. So now it's going to go back to master preview on antenna 1. Its gain set at 20, and it'll stay there till the next fish comes by. And that's what happens when you select master preview. Okay, so now we're going to go back into idle, and we're going to go back into the project editor, and we're going to go select a different option here. We're going to say group all those antennas. We're going to use that same effect, enable master preview with frequency priority. And then we're going to send one, and then we're going to go done. All the other settings should be the same, so we can just go done. And then we're going to go into code log, and then we're going to hit live view on again. And we'll see what happens for this one. As you can see, all those antennas are listening. Every port, that's all 4 ports. In the case, I've only got 2 ports open, so that it does make a difference, obviously, but it's still listening to those 2 ports. And now I'm going to just start my tag, and it should start. It'll pick it up on one. There we go. Now it should say antenna 1, and it's back to preview. Oh, it should only take the 2 because that's all I have selected in the antenna number of antennas. So now I'm going to just turn it off. It's going to go back to previewing on that channel, and it'll stay on that channel until it gets another hit. So that's one way of doing it. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into idle mode, and then I'm going to change it up where we'll see just antennas 1 and 2 with no master, and it doesn't really matter frequency priority or antenna priority, it really doesn't matter. So we're just going to send that 1. Since we only have one frequency, antenna priority is the way to go. So we're done there, and now we'll see code log and live view again, and it should just flip from one to the other. This is a good way to see which way a transmitter is coming from, because it'll be picked up on 1 first if it's coming from the downstream end. It'll be picked up on 2 if it's coming from the upstream. And you'll be able to see that in your data later on, your data log data. And then, see, I've only have one antenna on this device, so I shouldn't really pick up antenna 2 at all. It should only pick it up on antenna 1. But as you notice, it switches every 6 seconds between antenna 1 and an antenna 2, giving the time of arrival here, 15, 24, 27 was right in the middle of that. And that's how you set up antennas for various effects.